Right, we're here in the Orga jerseys. Wexford, Cork. It mightn't seem like the most obvious rivalry, but that's only because, like, in modern times, it probably hasn't been that way. But if you go back over time, what was it, there's 6 or 7 All Ireland finals between the two teams. They have had some, like, huge clashes over the years, some huge characters, Nicky Rackard, Christy Ring. Even in modern times, I mean, what, Martin Storey, Ben O'Connor, Brian Corcoran. There's any amount of them really. I mean, we've talked about it kind of between ourselves. They're fairly sweet jerseys, and it is a strong rivalry over the years.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of the. I'm a big fan of the Cork again blazoned here in the front of this. This is pure old school classic. And funny enough, like it's a weird kind of rivalry. Haven't met that many times. The first 6 out of the first 7 times they met were in All Ireland finals, and the second time they met was in an All Ireland home final. And Cork went on and were beaten by London thereafter. I think it was in 1903. But the limited amount of times they've played has still thrown up some unbelievable moments that we'll go into. Like some of the most iconic moments. Like for me, like even in '56, there's two of the most iconic moments in GA history within the one game. And then there's loads of other bits and pieces. Yeah, it's one of those things where, and even when they met in '93 in the trilogy of the league, it's like when they did meet, they were probably sick of each other in a short period of time. Then they might meet again for another while. But it's a great rivalry, and not one maybe you would think of.
We might as well start off then with 1956. And I mentioned those two huge characters, Nicky Rackard and Christy Ring. And when I was going over the score, which was, it ended up Wexford 2-14, 2-8 to Cork. I mean, this was Christy Ring back in his pomp, piling up the All Ireland medals, and he gets his 1-5 just like Nicky Rackard on the day. But of course, one of the subplots afterwards is how Christy Ring was treated on his way off the field, wasn't it?
Yeah, definitely. There's even a story to that in itself because Ring was bearing down on goal. Like I was saying earlier there about this being having two of the most iconic moments. So by all accounts, Art Foley's save from Christy Ring is like that's up there in Seamus Darby type territory for moments within the GA. And I just found an article here from the Kerry Man from a couple of years back, and they just describe basically Art Foley going through it, and he says, what did he say here? He said he can remember it vividly. He was asked the question years after. This is 1956. Asked the question years after, and his eyes lit up. He says, "Oh, sure, I remember it distinctly. I can still see it clearly. There was a long clearance from Cork, and Christie won the ball. He took off on a long solo run, cutting across the field. He came straight down the middle and stopped at the 21. Why didn't he keep going? I don't know. I'm still surprised. Well, he shot, and I blocked just under the crossbar, straight up in the air." He said this is where they always get it wrong. They always say I caught it and cleared it straight to Nicky Rackard and he scored the goal, but I blocked it out and Pat Barry Cork doubled on it and hit the outside of the net. Then I poked it out to Jim English. He passed it on to Tom Ryan. He got it to Nicky, and Nicky got the goal, and we went on and won. And like you talk about Christie being lifted off. Christie actually went into Art Foley after that play and shook his hand. Christie shook his hand. This is mid game. He said something to Foley. Foley said he wouldn't repeat it, but at the final whistle, we shouldered him off the pitch. That was how much we respected him. Like that's like you have to remember. Like it was butchery back then. It really was butchery back then. And for Christie to go in and shake his hand, and then for Art Foley, Rackard and Co to cheer Ring off the field, like that's really out of this world. Particularly for that kind of moment in time. That's what that period of time in the GAA.
And I was looking up who are the greatest goal scorers in the history of the GAA, and these two counties feature heavily. So Nicky Rackard has the most goals of all time, and there was one time he scored 7 goals against Antrim. So I don't know what way he was racking them up back in the day. I believe he had a fearsome free, but he scored 59.
Rack them up. Nicky racks them up. I like that.
But then you had Tony Doran, also of Wexford, big paw on him, and he scored a couple of goals in that 1976 All-Ireland that Cork beat them in. He has 40 goals, Eddie Kerr 35, then Christy Ring has 33, Shawnee O'Leary, who we'll see in the 76 and 77 finals when his nose was put sideways in the warm-up, he's got 30. And it was only recently I just remembered how much of a goat that Shawnee O'Leary was. He didn't look like your archetypal kind of nippy corner forward. Like he was a barrel running around the field, but he had great hurling, and he just always found a way to score.
Yeah, and Shawnee was still going in '84. Like I remember Shawnee breaking awfully hard in '84 and Thurles in the centenary final as well. But the story before the '77 final is gas, like, and it's real old school style. I still think like a lot of people, GA and sport has gone very kind of PC, but I still think there's room for this kind of train of thought. So Shawnee obviously got a bad belt in the warm up. I think it was in front of Hill 16, and he got hit with a slitter and he had a broken nose. And as Con Murphy said at the time, like you could see it was broken. It was over the other side of his face. And he said he missed the parade before the game due to his injury, but he played the full 70 minutes. But Con Murphy went in, and Christy Ring went in with him as well. And there was probably a conversation maybe like will Shawnee be able to play? And I remember Shawnee said there's a great clip of him saying, he just said Christy stuffed like basically gauze and stuff up my nose, and he just said it's not your effing nose that you're going to be playing the match with, just get out there and play or whatever. And there's a great quote even from Micheál O'Hare after Shawnee gets his first point quite early in the game. Maybe Shawnee should get a knock on his nose every game, that type of thing. And it was a great little side story too. Shawnee played the full game and got the crucial goal in the game, Cork's only goal in the game.
Yeah, and he got some scores in both 76 and 77, where the counties met 2 years in a row in All-Ireland finals. And when I was looking back at clips of him there, the style of some of the players, like, I think Gerald McCarthy is like, within Cork he's definitely remembered, but like the younger generations wouldn't realise how stylish he was. Charlie McCarthy as well, tanned legs bopping around the place. JBM, I mean, he was basically the George Best of hurling. He was, and football as well, because he was winning All Irelands back around that era. We said Shawnee O'Leary. Then you had Tony Doran, big agricultural yoke. You would not want him, like you wouldn't want a 50-50 high ball coming in, because he'll get that dirty paw up and he'll turn around and he'll barrel it into the net somewhere or other. Ray Cummins, probably like just the exact same thing on the other side of the field, albeit putting up the left paw. And I think he caught one unbelievable ball in the 76 final, turned around and kicked it over the bar, as he's flying through the air. So some great characters back there. And then one other guy who really stood out, now he came on as a sub in 76, John Horgan. He had this unbelievable shock of blonde hair. I don't know what it was like. It was like a Hollywood actor type hair going around the place, but it just felt like a different era. Even the Wexford jersey, it had these real blocky white numbers on the back of the shirts, looked great. And then the yellow socks going with the jersey, it was just a bit different. It just looked so different.
Just when you're going through that Cork team, I just read a piece in the Echo actually last night, and it was basically saying like how that Cork team in the 70s is basically you can't compare to it. And when you go down through those names, like there's legendary names there, legendary figures like as you said, Charlie McCarthy is a great little kind of yarn from the 77 final. Jack Russell came on for Wexford that day, and Charlie McCarthy had the ball, and Micheál O'Hare says that Jack Russell is after him. It's just these brilliant lines, and it's just looking at the Cork tracksuits even from back then. Basically all red. It was kind of an all red jacket and all red tracksuit, and the only thing that wasn't red was the boots nearly. An iconic kind of a period. And even on that 1977 final, it was the direct opposite of the 76 final. Wexford were 2-2 to no score up in 76 after 5 or 10 minutes. Got off to an absolute blistering start and kind of faded out. Whereas they were very slow to start in 77 and came with an unbelievable burst. Ned Buggy had a free near the end to draw it, and while Art Foley made the save in 56, it was Martin Coleman that made a brilliant save under the crossbar from Christy Keogh in 77. As Micheál O'Hare said, the save the kingdoms are made of. That was the middle part of a 3 in a row as well. But they were classic games, brilliant games. And even I was looking at Tom Cashman put over a line ball in the 77 final from about 45 yards out, which is like would have been relatively unheard of at that time with the heavy ball, and they wouldn't have been practicing the sideline balls. It was just, usually it wasn't even a cut a lot of the time back then. It was just whip on the ball and try and get 30 or 40 yards down the field. Yeah. But iconic games.
That must have been the era too when the linesman put the ball down for you. You weren't actually allowed to, the way you'd have the players now to be primping up the grass and sitting it up lovely. That this was just the linesman put it down for you. You weren't allowed to adjust it, and that was it. You pull on it.
Yeah, mad. Like a completely different era. If I was taking a line ball now, I'd need at least 15 seconds. And I don't know, I have this weird thing. I never forget Joe Dooley telling us in training. He always said that he, whatever way he took a line ball, he always had the gap in the rims facing him, and he could see I think it says size 5 on that side. He said he always had that facing him, and that was the routine then I followed. Whereas back then, it was so much simpler. Just the ball it was probably thrown on the ground. It probably wasn't even placed on the ground, and he just cuts it over from 45 yards, like legendary, really.
Jump forward then to the early 90s. Now, they wouldn't have played in the Championship for a long time after that. But if you jump back to the 1992-93 league, they played 3 times. So 2-11 to 2-11 the first day. Cork 18 points to 3-9. And then 3-11 to 1-12 to Wexford the third day. So that was very close. And apparently John O'Connor had a free to win it one day. And, of course, Wexford actually haven't won it since.
Yeah, 3 games basically within like 2 weeks. Played in Semple Stadium. I don't know, like the one memory I have of it. My father, cute enough as he is, we had a bet on the first game, and we had a bet on the second game, and because they were both draws, they carried over. But I didn't get a choice in who I wanted to bet on, so he was betting on the favourite, and I was betting on Wexford, and he was dancing around the kitchen when he took 50 pence off me, which I don't even know how I had 50 pence back then after they won in '93. But yeah, Wexford haven't won one since, and I just like that was like pre-championship, and it was just 3 absolute epics that you're not really expecting. You know, the league wouldn't have been taken unbelievably serious. Once they got to a final, it would have been taken serious, but they were 3 savage.
Then if we jump forward to 2003, when they finally met in the Championship again, that's probably a forgotten classic. Now, in the replay in the All-Ireland semi-final, Cork battered Wexford. Like, they absolutely battered them. But in the drawing game, you can't but go past that Rory McCarthy goal. For anyone who doesn't remember, ball broke to him. I can't remember who soloed through, given out to him. Tight angle, lashed it into the roof of the net. Absolute classic goal.
Yeah, Mitch Jordan threw it out to him, who was deadly the same day. He actually caused the Rock unbelievable damage that day. Funnily enough, that day, Dermot Sullivan was wearing 4 and actually played a good bit corner back. Ended up being switched in full at one stage. I think Pat Mulcahy was in trouble. Paul Codd got a goal off him early. But it was an absolute brilliant game. It was probably the last stand for some of those kind of Wexford legends. Liam Dunn and Larry O'Gorman would retire later on that year. And do you know, when that kind of a dying empire or an empire that's just ready to fall, they had their last kind of chance and they kind of didn't take it, and they were lucky to get the draw in the end. But that Rory McCarthy goal was absolutely unbelievable. I remember Wexford were up by 5 points early in the second half, and there's a great quote from Cyril Farrell in commentary. He said, "Cork are coming like a steam train. The trains were stopped coming up from Mallow this morning, but they're on a roll here now." They were 5 up. It looked like the game was over. Larry Murphy set up a goal, and then at the last puck of the game, Rory McCarthy got a goal from a ridiculous angle. It didn't look like it was a possibility at all. Just looking back on that game as well, it's mad to think like Satanto Halpin's inter-county career was really only one season, and the impact he had in that one season. Like, I remember looking at him, when he got the ball, he was gliding away from defenders. Like, imagine how good he would have been over the course of a decade. Wins an All-Star and Young Hurler of the Year in basically his only year of county hurling.
And would he have gone, would Cork have done the treble? You know, would they have won 4, 5, 6 if they had him? Just a completely different option. They obviously brought back Brian Corcoran, but having the two of them together, put those hands together, that mightn't have been too bad. A player that kind of stands out, probably not most obviously to a lot of viewers, but John Myler. He played for both, played and managed both counties. So 1978 to 82 played for Wexford. He's from a parish called Tackham Shane, played for Our Lady's Island, then moved to St Finbarrs, and played for Cork from 1983 to 87. Ends up managing both counties. So he's probably... And he came just after, I think, Kieran Kingston's first season as Cork manager in 2016. Lost to Wexford in Thurles. It was the first time that they had lost to the model county in 60 years, and it was a bit of a shocker. Who would have thought that Cork would get to an All-Ireland semi-final the following year? I don't know if you remember that game in Thurles. I think Conor MacDonald put up a big score that day. Yeah,
no, I remember it well. Yeah, it was down there. It was a double header the same evening, and that was the first. I think that was the first of the double header. MacDonald ended up with 13 points. He was on the freeze. I think it was 3 from play. Lee Chin was absolutely unreal that night. Liam McGovern finished real well too. But remember, that was a Wexford team that were in absolute tatters earlier on in the year, hammered by Dublin up in Croke Park on that wet evening, where it looked like that was the death knell for Liam Dunn, and yet they managed to get a bit of a run in the qualifiers, beat Offaly, and then really out of nowhere, you'd have to say, beat Cork. So like Davy Fitz ended up coming in at the end of 2016, but there were signs of what was to come in Wexford. They could produce a result sometimes out of the blue. So remember the Clare performance in 13 when Clare went on to win the All Ireland, bringing it to extra time. Then obviously beating the reigning All Ireland champions the year after, and even beating Cork in 16. There were signs of what was to come and the success and the improvements that were to come under Davy, but that was a massive shock at the time.
A real forgotten game would be the 2012 clash, also in Thurles. I think it was a qualifier, or I'll just double check it here. It was a qualifier, yeah, it was. It was an All-Ireland qualifier, and there was a triple header in Thurles that day. And I remember by the end of it, my eyes were ready to bleed just from watching GA after GA after GA. I think it was possibly 1 football and 2 hurling games, but 3 is too many. But this was actually, from what I know, this was the birth of the Anthony Nash free. It was the first time he'd done this one, lifting it at the 21, carrying it all the way into around 12 yards out, and absolutely lifted the net off its rigging. That's the only reason it stands out, because otherwise 10-point win for Cork and not a whole lot of fuss about it otherwise. But if we're to try and find one of these classic iconic rivalries from over the years, there weren't too many guys in the modern eras that you could say these are like for like, that you can kind of pit against each other. If we went way back in the day, you could probably go Tony Doran against Ray Cummins, but the younger generations wouldn't remember them. But they were both kind of target men. You could let the ball in any which way and they'll win it for you. You might go Nicky Rackard against Christy Ring, but we wouldn't have seen enough of them, if we're being honest. But Ben O'Connor against Martin Storey, not exactly like for like, but 2 lads in the forward line who could win you games, who were winning All-Stars, who were top of the range.
Yeah, just from a Ben O'Connor point of view, because I'm obviously dressed in the Cork garb. Like Ben O'Connor and the style that they played, him and Jerry, and the style that Newtown played, kind of changed hurling, and the Newtown style was carried on with Cork. It was that running game, it was that possession style. Now, when you play that sort of style, it's hard for your career. When your career kind of stops, your body probably fails on you. But during his Cork career, he was absolutely outstanding. I would still say, he's probably the best ball carrier I've ever seen in the GAA. Just his ability to carry ball, his ability to float around lads, his ability to make up space and even be it score or hand pass off to someone else. He was top class. Brilliant free taker as well. Remember his goal in the 05 All Ireland when he got the march on Ollie Canning and kind of got the crucial goal that helped Cork win 2 in a row that day. He was deadly. And even like before he came out into the half forward, he's probably best known out in the half forward, and would be definitely actually. He terrorised some defenders in corner forward. I remember like he probably would have been the one, like Martin Hanamy is my absolute icon growing up, one of the best cornerbacks that hurling has ever produced. The only bad game he ever played for Offaly was when he was marking Shawnee McGrath and was then switched on to Ben O'Connor because Shawnee was going well, and it just went from bad to worse because you were switching from one lad in form to another lad who could absolutely kill you for legs. He was a brilliant attacker, could score from anywhere as well, and it's just iconic. You just see him weaving with the ball on the hurl. That was kind of his trademark.
Yeah, Martin Storey just stands out so much. That moustache, hard beat that moustache. I remember one day with Kula, we went to play Oulart. This would have been around 2012 in a challenge match, and they bet as well. But he gives a speech afterwards, and he was talking all about the value of those stick passes, 20, 30 yards, just to mix it up, pull the other team around, and then obviously deliver after that. It was just great to listen to him. You can sort of understand straight away that he was a complete leader. Scored 2 points in the All-Ireland final in 1996. Iconic sort of captain. You just picture him with did he have one of those kind of, the way you have the ribbons that are sort of purple and gold, obviously for Wexford. Did he have it around his head or around his neck around that time in the celebrations? And just an iconic sort of a captain. Yeah,
of course, the great line in the speech as well, we've been known as the bridesmaids. Well, today we got married, and he was instrumental in that, really. Not only was he captain, I remember that when they played Offaly in 96, he was absolutely inspirational. He was the sort of lad that, like, they got to a supreme level of fitness in 96 under Liam Griffin, and they were able to kill teams near the end. And Storey could pop up with 2 or 3 near the end of a game when legs were failing, and he was able to pop over 2 or 3. Yeah, he was a deadly forward, and as you say, kind of like the porn star moustache almost, and like he's old school as well. I remember me and you chatting to him before, and I had heard a story about him that he didn't eat vegetables. So he didn't eat any vegetables, didn't like vegetables. But his solution to that was he reckoned that he could get all the nutrition that he wanted out of a vegetable stock cube. Do you know? And these are the sort of iconic figures within the J. He was a class forward, deadly forward, 3-time All-Star, brilliant player.
Yeah, he probably like Ben O'Connor would have visited more pain on Tipperary than Martin Storey. So I'm going to stick with Martin Storey, and we'll put it out to a vote and tell us who you prefer. But even from the current teams, for example, Lee Chin, he'd be the iconic figure of this current team. Would you take him, or would you take maybe Dara Fitzgibbon? I mean, two lads who can move. I mean, Dara Fitzgibbon, we're probably still only at the start with him. He's 22 or something like that. Chin is turning 28 later this year. If you had to pick between the two, who would you take?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I would have probably matched up Chin against someone like Harnedy, and I'd probably match up maybe Fitzgibbon against maybe Dee O'Keefe, maybe, because they're that type of ball carrier. But just on them, like, Fitzgibbon has so much scope for improvement. Like, he's an unbelievable athlete, like, and he's just brilliant at breaking that line as well and getting scores. I'm gonna go with Fitzgibbon against Dee O'Keefe. I'd probably go with Dee O'Keefe because I just think he's at times he's just a bit cuter. He can get himself into better positions at times, and it's not just all about carrying ball and breaking tackle. How many times have we seen a ball flicked out 40 or 50 yards to Dee O'Keefe standing by himself to put a ball over the bar? Like, he's one of the best players at finding space now in the modern game. He's unbelievable at it.
Yeah, he's brilliant, but I can see Dara Fitzgibbon over time being the sort of player who scores 4 or 5 points from play on big days. He just has that pace, and his hurling is class. I can see him, if Cork ever actually find that steal that they need in the team, or whatever it is they're missing to take that next step to an All-Ireland, I see him being the sort of player that destroys teams. Like, don't get me wrong, I think Dermot O'Keefe is class, and he runs games, and he has just got a massive engine. But who else has Dara Fitzgibbon's pace? And if you have that coming from deep, like, that's like Ben O'Connor and a few other players all rolled into one, because he's got the size to go with it too. So I think his potential is anywhere. I don't think Wexford haven't had anyone who can compare with Pat Horgan in the last God knows how many number of years. He's just a different level altogether, isn't he?
He is. He's on a different planet. Like, the only, like, as inside forwards go, Conor McDonald is the only one you could compare, but you're comparing apples with oranges there, really. McDonald, to me, McDonald has one of the best paws I've seen in the game. Like, if you put McDonald 1-on-1 up against anybody, he'll win 70% of the ball, I'd say. But it's only when there's more defenders around and lads can spoil and someone else can come in that he's kind of negated. But they're different types of forwards. Horgan is not saying that McDonald's not wristy and stylish, but Horgan is the supreme stylist with the wrists where he doesn't even need half a yard to get a score, and he's probably in the form of his life at the moment. Obviously nominated for Hurler of the Year last year. McDonald is quite underrated though. He's quite underrated for what he's actually delivered for Wexford. Like, I know Ronan Matter was good on him in the All-Ireland semi-final last year, but McDonald ended up with 2-2. Do you know what I mean? Like, he invariably delivers on the big occasion for Wexford. But if they had that killer inside, that killer of a Pat Horgan, they'd probably play differently in a way. Like, Davey is kind of playing the way that suits the players that he has. But he'd take your right arm to have a player like Pat Horgan.
At the flip side, then, I think Cork would kill to have a Liam Ryan full-back, Matthew O'Hanlon being able to pick up the sort of marquee forward, for Kevin Foley to act as a sweeper if they were going to play with that sort of a setup. So I think you've got two serious sets of players, and I'd actually love to see this rivalry revived in the championship. It'd be nice to see them play a couple of big games, maybe at Croke Park, like the clash of colours. Like, you can just look at the two jerseys there now. There's just a great clash of colours, and I love the fact that has the old school Kirkick at the front of the jersey there, which you can get.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you can get it there on orgaretro.com, and if you use the promo code OurGame, you can get 15% off.